first part of your test, target A is solving equations. So when we solve equations, there's a couple ways we can do it. We can solve it by factoring, which is going to be number 3 and number 2. Number 1 is going to be solving by taking the square root. And then number 4, yes, the quadratic formula will be on there. However, they're the easier ones where you don't really have to do anything but plug it in. Okay, but I gave you the formula. As you see, even on the test, it looks like this. This is exactly where the formula will be. Again, same exact order. Okay, so the first one. The goal is for you to solve for x. Now, because I don't have like a middle term where there's an x there, there's x squared, but there's no x term. I'm just going to move that 121 over to the right side. So plus 121. And I get x squared is equal to 121. Does anyone remember what I have to do now to get rid of the x squared? Yeah. You have to take the square root. Very good. So I square root. That cancels out just this little 2. We still have x. And what is the square root of 121? 11. And do you remember what I have to put out in front? Not the square root. Yeah, very good. The plus minus. Because again, negative 11 squared and 11 squared gets me 121, and that's my final answer. So pretty straightforward, not too hard of a task here. Questions on 1. I want this to be like the best test you have all year because you're going to be super prepared for it. There's not much material on it. Okay, this next one. Okay, now we have a situation where we have an x squared and an x term, but we don't have a number. So there's 2 still here, but this time we don't have just a number. So this is one where you want to factor. We're going way back to a couple weeks ago. What is common? What number is common between 2 and 16? 2. Okay, how many x's can I also factor out? 1x. So our GCF, now let me write this out just for your sake of notes. You don't have to do that every single time. I'm going to divide each one by 2x because that's my GCF. And whatever you write underneath there comes out, and we have to figure out what's left inside. So 2 divided by 2 cancels out. What's x squared divided by x? X. Bring down the plus sign. 16 divided by 2? 8. Very good. 8. And then the x's go away. Okay, because x divided by x cancels out. Now, if you remember from way back when, this is when we took this guy, set him equal to 0, and we took this guy, x plus 8, and set him equal to 0. And we get 2 answers. So here, what do I have to do first, or what do I have to do in general to solve for x in this situation? Divide by 2. Well, 0 divided by any number in the world is just going to get me 0. So that's one of my answers. Okay, now what about this one? Yeah, negative 8, because I subtract 8 from both sides. Gone, and I get x equals negative 8. Okay, and we're done. This is not the situation where we have to plug back in to find y, because it's not a system. We haven't gotten there yet. So we're done. Those are my 2 answers. They're called solutions. Okay, this one. This is the one that I feel like, from my experience as a teacher, is the one that people get stuck on. So really make sure that we're paying attention for number 3. So this is a 1 because that a value in front is not 1. This guy is a 7. He's not a 1. If it was 1, it would be an easier problem, but this is not that case. So I have to do what multiplies to 7 times negative 8. What is 7 times negative 8? Very good. Okay, and adds to the middle term. It's always the middle guy. So negative 1. There's a 1 in front of that x. Okay, so now I'm going to list out my chart. I have 1 in 56. That's not going to work. When I do 56 divided by 2, what do you get? 56. So I have 2 and 28. Still not going to add or subtract to get me negative 1. Okay, so then I'm going to do 56 divided by 3. Doesn't work. It's a decimal. 56 divided by 4. 4 and 14. Still not going to work. 56 divided by 5 won't work. 56 divided by 6. Not going to work. 56 divided by 7 gets me 8. So the 7 and 8 is going to work out. Now, I want a negative 1 as my result. Which one must be negative then? The 8, very good, because you want the bigger number to be the sign that you want. Okay, so Negative 1 is what I want, so the bigger number, 8, needs to be the negative. Okay, so now this is the one where it wasn't as easy as like the ones that we're going to do in a little bit here. We got to take those two numbers and break down the middle term into those two numbers. So that plus 7x that we found and that negative 8x. In black, I'm bringing it down. 7x squared minus 8 equals 0. Okay, the goal for us to do factor by grouping is to find these numbers. If you could have done it without making a table, that's fine. Some people would have been able to say 7 and 8 right away. Okay, that's totally up to you, depends on how your brain works. Then we plugged it in to replace this middle one. Because look, 7 minus 8 gets me negative 1. That's why we can do it. It's mathematically valid. Okay, so now we're going to group the first two, group the second two. So this one's been a while since we've done this. You guys did really great with it 2 weeks ago, but it's been a while. What can I factor out of 7x squared and 7x? Good, a 7 and what else? Very good. We got to figure out what's left over. Now again, some of you will be able to just do 7x squared divided by 7x, or if you really like to write it out here, you can. You're dividing each one by 7x. What's left inside then? X plus 1. Be careful. 7 divided by 7 gets me 1, and then the x's cancel. Okay, now let's look at this next one. I'm going to cover this up. We're not looking at this side. What's common between a negative 8x and a negative 8? Yeah, an 8, but we're going to keep that negative with it. We're going to keep it. Whenever there's a negative out in front, just like this guy, we're going to keep it with. So the negative 8 comes out, and what's left is x plus 1. Remember, that was when we were like super excited because that was the goal. The goal is for you to get the same thing on the inside so that you can factor that out. So sometimes it's nice to highlight, or if you like to, underline that that's coming out and then like this is going to be together too. Either way that you remember it, or maybe you don't have to do any of it, that's fine. But in blue, the 7x minus 8 gets factored out, and then in yellow, the x plus 1 gets factored out, all equaling 0. Okay, that was that hard one. Now we're pretty much done. We just got to set each one equal to 0. So this guy, 7x minus 8 equals 0, and x plus 1 equals 0. Let's do the easy one first. Don't want to rush it too much. I feel like we're still writing. Sorry, I'm rushing. I didn't mean to rush. Okay, let's look at the easy one. What do I got to do to both sides for this guy? Careful, it is adding 1. Subtract 1. So I got to subtract 1. So I get x equals negative 1. That's one of my answers. Oop, that looks awful. Redo that. X equals negative 1. Okay, now this one. Not as easy, but it's okay. It's a two-stepper. What do I got to do with the 8 first? Add it. Add 8. Gone. I get 7x equals 8. Now, this is going to be, when you're doing one of these problems like this, you will always get a fraction. So expect it. So when you're doing one of the harder ones like this, you will get a fraction because we have to divide by 7 then. And I get x equals 8 over 7. And you can keep it that way. If you want to make it a decimal, you can, but I just keep it in fraction form. So that, in my opinion, is probably the harder one. Hardest one that you'll see on the test is this guy. Out of all of the ones that you have for the test, this is the one I think where we see the most errors. So take your time with it. When you're doing the review on your own, try not to use the packet that we're doing right now to see if you can do it. And then if you still can't do it, then you look back. That's kind of a good way to see where you're at when we're going into the test. Okay? This next one, the quadratic formula. It's really not that bad because I'm giving you ones that don't reduce. I'm giving you ones that are just you plug it in and you're done. Okay? So A is going to be 2, B is going to be negative 7, and C is going to be negative 6. Goes in order. So here we go. I'm just going to follow my equation. Negative B, that just means the opposite of B. It's currently a negative 7, so what I'm going to write here? Positive 7, because it's the opposite of B, which is just 7. Plus or minus the square root of something. So we got B squared. So I'm going to put it in parentheses. Whenever I'm working with a negative, I would put it in parentheses. Minus 4 is part of the equation. And then what was A? 2. And then what was C? Good. All over 2 times my A value, which is 2. Now, the only thing you're going to have to do to reduce this is get out your fancy calculator. And this is the most, just knowing that you have to do this. No radical, just what's highlighted, needs to be put in the calculator. So I can do it with you just to make sure that you know how to do it. Here's mine. Okay, here we go. Parentheses, -7 all squared minus 4, parentheses 2, close it up, parentheses -6, close it up. So even just being able to type this in is a skill. Remember that these are negative signs, and that's a -4, not a -4, because that'll give you a different answer. And you should get 97. Is that what you got? Okay, if you didn't, let me know, and I'll come check your calculator. So I get, as my final answer, we're pretty much done. Hold on. There we go. Okay, 7x equals 7 plus or minus the square root of, was it 97? 97. What's 2 times 2 at the bottom? 4, and we're done. So it wasn't that bad. The other ones that we did in the notes, we could reduce. 97, that's prime. You can't even reduce that. Okay, and that's what it's going to be like on the review that you're going to get and the test. So you'll get practice with that. It's not too hard when it's an easier one. Flip when you're ready, so I know that I can move on. Again, and the rest of the time will be yours to work on the review, and then you have the whole period tomorrow to work on it. So if you don't want to do any homework tonight, don't do that. You can work on it tomorrow in class. You should be able to finish it in one period. Okay. All right, this says solving system. So this should be fresh in your mind. We just stopped doing this. Okay, we have 2 situations. Number 5 is when they're 2 linear ones. Linear just means that there's no squared there. It's just a 1. Whereas down here, this little guy is a square. That's a quadratic. That's when you have to do the factoring. Okay, so knowing the difference between the 2 will help you out. I think that these ones are easier, but that's just me. Yes. Oh, mine is different. Thank you for reminding me. If you can cross out yours and write this one on, because the one that you have doesn't work out. So maybe write it up here. 7x minus 6y equals 24. Y equals -2x plus 15, and then cross yours out. Because when I was making the key for this, it didn't work out nice and pretty. So I wanted to make sure that you got one that was nice and pretty when we reviewed. So I made one up and put it on here. So cross yours out and rewrite it maybe up here to give you some room. Okay, so now what's nice about this is when it says y equals this whole thing. So your first step is to take this whole piece and plug it into y. Wherever you see a y, you're plugging in -2x plus 15. Okay, so that's your first step, kind of making steps out here for you. Okay, first step, 7x minus 6 times the whole piece, -2x plus 15 in blue equals 24. Do you have questions on why or what we did there? Remember, you have y equals something, so if I know what y is, I can substitute it in. That's why we can do that. All right, now what do we do? Yeah, you distribute that in. So I'm going to take the -6, distribute it in, and I'm just going to bring down the 7x. What's -6 times -2x? Yeah, positive 12x in blue. Then -6 times 15, that's going to be a bigger number. -90. In black, bring down my equals, bring down my 24. So again, now our second step is just solving for x. Okay, so plug it in, then solve for x. Now I'm going to combine these guys in blue. What is 7x plus 12x? 19x. Bring down the -90. Bring down the 24. So in black, everything remained the same. Now when we solve, we're still solving here. Oops. What do I got to do next to solve for x? Yeah, add 90. And I get, bring down the 19x, it hasn't changed, equals 114, I think? Yeah, 114. So in black, that didn't change, just this part in purple did. Now the very last step is to divide. Now I would never expect you to know what this is. That's why you have a calculator. And what do you get? 6. So this is the one I was talking about earlier in the note in this review, is that once you find x, you now have to find y. Okay, so whenever you're doing systems, that is telling you to find the ordered pair of the solution. Okay, so now I just got to plug it in. So my third step is to plug in for y. So I have y equals -2. I'm going to take that 6 in purple, plug it in, plus 15. Now if you chose to do the first equation, that's fine. I'm just telling you that this one's going to be easier. So being able to recognize the one that says y equals would be easier is also a good skill to have. So I get y equals -12 plus 15, which is what? 3. Oops, 3. So now when I write it as an ordered pair, I have 6, 3. And you're done. Okay, so my x value was 6. When I plugged it in, I got 3. That's why my answer is 6, 3. I took my 6 that I found, plugged them in, and my output value, or the value I got back, was 3, and that's why it's 6, 3. Do you have questions on this one? You sure? Okay, lots of review right now. All right, solve the system of equations algebraically. Show all work for full credit. Okay, so this is the one where you're going to have to factor. So they both equal y, so you're going to set them equal to each other. So I have x squared minus 5x minus 4 is equal to -2x. So that was my first step. I'm just setting them equal to each other. Now the second step is to take whatever's on the right side here and move them to the left side so that it equals 0. You want it to equal 0, so it's my second step is to make it equal to 0. And what would I have to do to move this 2x to the left side? So it is currently a negative, so I'd have to add it. Okay, working through that. So adding the 2x over gets me a -3x. Bring down the -4. Bring down the equals, and now when you subtract them, you get 0 on this right side. The third step is to factor. And I think that some of you actually might like this better than the one that we just did because you've gotten really good at factoring. And now look at a is 1. When a is 1, you can go right to the end, not like number 3 on the first page. So we ask ourselves, what multiplies to -4 and adds to -3? Again, some of you might be able to just know that without writing the table out, but if you don't, write it out. So I get 1 and 4. That's going to add or subtract to get -3. Because I want my addition to be a negative number, which one must be negative, the 1 or 4? The 4, very good. So +1 minus 4. The bigger number is going to be negative because I want a negative number. Okay, so now this was the fun one. You can go right to the end. There's no difficult part in this. I have x plus 1 and x minus 4 all equals 0. Again, some of you, when I walked around on Friday, were able to go right to the end, though, not even writing this step. But that's okay if you're not that person. I'm just saying that some people might know how to do it right away. So does anyone know what is this one going to equal then? Yeah, -1. It's always the opposite. And then this one? Just a 4. Very good. +4. Now, you could have set them both equal to 0 and solved if you wanted. If you're someone that wanted the work, you could have this. You don't have to write this down if you understood what I was talking about. But if you didn't, write that in between. That's the step we skipped for some. Okay, so that means I need to find, my third step is always going to be to plug in to find y. So I know I can kind of even set up my ordered pairs here. I'm going to have -1, I'm going to have 4. We just need to find its y. We always got to find its pair. We don't know it yet. Okay, so now I'm going to plug in -1. Again, when you look at these two, if you look at them, this one looks harder than this one. It does. But if you choose to plug it into this one, that's fine. Okay, so when I plug in my -1, y equals -2 in green, I have -1. What do you get? Good, I get 2, so that goes in here. Because I plugged in -1 and I got back 2. That's why it goes together with the -1. Now when I plug in -2 in purple, that 4, what do you get? -8. And again, because I plugged in 4 and I got -8, that's why they go together, 4 and -8. And you're done. Okay? Make sure you got all that down. You guys have been doing a fantastic job with these. It is a harder topic. It is one that is on, for sure, the SAT. These 2 problems, 4 and 6. Definitely one to make sure that you're paying attention to. Okay, these ones are easy. I think graphs are easy. Sketch a graph that represents a system of 2 equations with 1 solution. Okay, so they could only cross 1 time, is what it's saying. There's 2 equations, and they only cross 1 time. Okay, so I don't care what you draw. It just needs to cross 1 time. There it is. Done. You could have drew something over here. It doesn't matter as long as they cross once. On the review, I put something very similar to it. Okay, make sure that you don't just copy the same one that we do in class. Okay, next page. Now this one is exactly the same as the review you're about to get, but I want you to make sure that you draw them in yourself. Okay, see if you can do it without looking at this, because there's so many ways you could draw it. It says, sketch a quadratic. Remember, quadratic looks like a U. Either that way or that way. It doesn't matter which one you draw. Okay, it's just as long as you got a U. That's what a quadratic is. With 1 real 0. So it's only 1 equation. Now, when you're talking about real zeros, you're talking about how many times it crosses the x-axis. Okay, so if you want to put a little star, how many times it crosses the x-axis, so that you remember. If it says 1 real 0, it only crosses 1 time. If it says 2, it crosses twice. If it says imaginary, it doesn't cross at all. Okay, so for 1 real, I can just draw something like this. Whatever you have is fine, as long as it only crosses at 1 time. Again, you could have drawn something completely different than what I did. Now 2 real, again, doesn't matter. I'm just going to maybe do 2 intercepts so I can make sure that I cross it twice. Now maybe I'll change it up and I'll go down. You could have went up, and it still would have been the right answer. So when you do these ones on the review, please try to draw your own and not look at mine. See if you actually understand what's going on. Now 2 imaginaries, I'm going to come over here and maybe do something like that, where it will never cross the x-axis. I will warn you, if you draw something like this, don't draw it in. That's not true, because look, it's going to eventually cross. Okay, so make sure your arrows are the right direction. Now, if you would have drawn this, that would be fine. Because again, they're going down, but they're never going to touch here. Questions on that one? All right, then we got 2 more, and then you got a lot of time today and tomorrow. Now, you could use your graphing calculator for this. It's up to you. If not, just try to remember, what we're doing here. Use the vertex form of a quadratic function to determine whether the zeros of the function are real or imaginary. So this is all going back to that discriminant that one day that we had. I forgot what day it was, day maybe like 10 or 11. Okay, so when we look at this, can anyone tell me what the vertex is based off the equation?
2 -1.
Yeah, 2 -1. So I'm going to put that in, 2 -1. Now, is it going to concave up or concave down? Up. Okay, we know it's up because that number right here is positive. If it was negative, it'd be going down. If you forgot any of this, you could have got out your graphing calculator and typed this into y equals and still gotten the same thing as us. So let's graph it out. I have 2, 1, 2, down 1. I know yours is hard to see, but it's going to be somewhere around there, and it goes up. I'm not looking for a perfect graph. I just want you to sketch it. Now, are these zeros right here on the x-axis real or imaginary? They're real, and we're done. They cross it. If they literally touch the x-axis, it's real. If they don't touch it at all, like the one we drew up here, it's imaginary. That's how you know. And again, you could get out your graphing calculator, type this in, and not even think about it, okay? You guys know so much, and it's awesome. Okay, the discriminant, last one. This is that one where if it was positive, you have 2 real. If it's negative, you have 2 imaginary. And if it's 0, you have 1 real. Okay, so those are the 3 options you have. So we're looking for positive, negative, or 0. Here we go. Just like the quadratic equation, A is 1, B is 3, and C is 2. We're only doing that little piece of the quadratic that we have to plug into our calculator underneath the radical. And again, just like on the test, it gives it to you. So I have b squared. Whenever I'm working with squared, I put in parentheses, even though I don't need it for a positive number. Minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 2. Let me know what you get in your calculator when you do this. You got 1. Okay, now a lot of people, when you get 1, you will circle 1. That's not what it's telling you. It's telling you if it's positive. Remember, you're looking for if it's positive, negative, or 0. This is a positive number. Positive. That's what's important, that it's positive, not that the number is 1. Okay, if it was a negative number, it's different. So positive means I'm going to have 2 real, and I'm done. So if you want to write something out for yourself, positive, 2 real, negative, 2 imaginary. This way you remember what they are. And then if it equals 0, it's going to be 1 real. Those are the only options you have. If you do the discriminant and it's a positive discriminant, you have 2 real. If it's negative, 2 imaginary. And if it's 0,